Well, hello everybody. This is Ken Himmler, and welcome to another broadcast of the Wiser Money Show. Today is Friday, September 9th, 2022. Hey, I have some updates for you. I am finding that I am stretching to find new, valuable, and important economic updates for you. Really, now that we're out of this pandemic, I'm just watching the inflationary rates. I'm watching the per capita debt. I'm watching the per capita income, the unemployment rate. We're watching productivity rates. But a lot of this stuff is just not changing. So there's not really a lot of news that I think can be helpful at least once a week. So here's what I'm going to do. Now, if we have some massive catastrophe like the pandemic, maybe I go back to a week to give you some more in-depth, up-to-date information. But listen, I don't want to have you jump on here every week and just listen to me talk about nothing that's really changed. Now, if there's big IRS changes, I will definitely jump on. And we might be jumping back on here more often after the November midterms. But right now, I'm going to go back to once a month as opposed to once a week. That will start on October 1st. Best thing I could do is tell you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified of any upcoming broadcasts. So today we're going to cover a couple things, IRS inflation, stock market, Secure Act, Econ map. So, when I talk about inflation, you have to look at what the components of inflation are. If you have a low unemployment rate, you have a lot of government free money coming in, and a supply chain that's stuck, that is throttling, products and services, you can't help but grow the inflation rate, which is where we're at. We're at a sustained 9% or plus in an inflationary rate. Now, when we look at why these things happen, well, look at what just happened here. This is what Biden said. Consistent with America's bedrock values, we will not penalize individuals for choosing to access the health benefits and other supplemental government services available to them, he said. Now, let me tell you what my opinion is. This is not a bedrock value of America. It is a value of a socialistic belief to open borders, give free benefits at the taxpayer costs, which gains votes. Even Sweden does not have open borders and free health care for all who come. But it is a political strategy. And I can tell you, I am an American, born here. I've worked, all my life and paid my fair share of taxes. I don't have free health care. I wish I did, but I don't have free health care. But this is an unfairity to those people who have worked, and now somebody can cross the border, and because they are able to cross the border, we're going to bring them in and pay up to $20,000 per year in total costs per person. So you get a husband, a wife, a child that crosses the border. Mexico's lack of health care is not our problem. And we are not the contributors to the world's health problems. We have enough of our own. But now this will become one of our problems. And where do you think inflation stems from? Well, it stems from here. Because when you start giving away this free aid, now what you've got is an entirely new system that is going to cost taxpayers more money. Well, let's talk about that, because we talked about the 80-some billion dollars that the IRS has gotten approved and the 87,000 new employees that they're going to be hiring. I'm putting the warning out. If you've listened to me for any decade period of time, there's been some big ones that I've put out. I put it out in 99 with the big bond crash. I put it out in 95, 96 with the tech crash that happened in 98. I talked about the real estate crash in 05, 06. God, I can still remember real estate agents threatening, and I kept telling them, why are you so upset with me? You get to make money on both sides. If it goes up, you sell it. When people can't afford it, it goes down, you sell it. You're making both sides. What are you so upset with me about? And because I kept saying, don't buy real estate. All these different factors I've talked about because they were just writing on the wall. Didn't have a crystal ball, but how hard is it to really figure it out? You got $80 billion now with 87,000 people to chase 739 billionaires. Come on, those numbers don't work out. They say they're not going after the middle class. Yeah, okay, well, I'll believe that when I see it. That's the easiest targets possible. So what I'm saying is, if you have an LLC you have a business, boy, oh boy, you better get your books and records in order, and you better make sure that you're not doing anything in the gray area, and you better make sure that the way that you are moving money is correct. There's what's called FinCEN and FACTA. These are all new laws that will be coming in January, and they will put an entirely new layer of complexity and cost onto every single business owner to report to the government even more. So I'm saying get your business and house in order, especially if you're using asset protection LLCs. All right, so here is one thing I do want to bring up, and that is the Secure Act 2.0. I've been talking about this now for what, 3 years? Going on 3 years. Right now, there's absolutely no opposition on passing this law. I plan on it probably doing like they did last year, December 15th, everything goes through and nobody has time to maneuver. How does this affect you? If you're retired and you have assets in retirement plans, IRAs, 401ks, number one, your RMD is going to change. But number two, the biggest issue, you're going to need to have your trust revised. Now, if you've listened to me for the last couple of years, we came up with an idea back in July of 2020. And that idea was to offer a trust amendment package. Why? Well, a typical good, well-written trust runs anywhere between $1,500 to $2,500 on the low end. Medium is usually $5,000 if you're dealing with a high-end legal firm. But, somewhere in that range. Now, every time there is a massive tax update, you don't just get to amend it. Amending it is more if you're changing a beneficiary, you're changing the percentages to the beneficiaries, things like that. That's an amendment. Very simple, 1 or 2 pages, etc. A major rewrite is what happened when they changed Secure Act 1.0. And the reason is the IRS eliminated certain language that applied to retirement plans. In the first Secure Act 1.0, they literally did away with the wording required minimum distributions to beneficiaries. Well, every trust for years and years had that language in the trust. Well, now you have a language that doesn't apply to the rules. So we had to go back in and really just rewrite all the trusts. By the time you get done trying to match up every paragraph that connects to every other paragraph, and if we did billable time, it'd be more expensive to amend that kind of major overhaul than it would be to write a new trust from the ground up with all the new language already set in stone. So I saw this as, because anytime the IRS comes out with something, they usually change it 2 or 3 times because of, whatever happens. So we came up with this trust amendment package. It's just a low fixed fee every year. And then we'll do amendments, meaning the simple amendments, meaning, if you have a beneficiary change of percentages, adding or subtracting assets from it, retitling, things like that. Simple stuff from our standpoint. But the major stuff, like a complete trust revision, well, that is expensive. So we include that in there. And the reason I'm telling you this is if you're under that subscription with us, we will now be rewriting your entire trust from the ground up. However, if you're not in that program, you will need to contact us. And unfortunately, it's going to cost you a lot more because it's going to be a complete rewrite. Essentially, they are keeping some of their old estate planning laws, but they're revising. And it's not a revision back to the way it was prior to Secure Act 1.0. It's a revision of 1.0. So now we have to completely rewrite it again. So that's something to be aware of, that if you're not a client of ours and we didn't draft your trust, you probably need to get a hold of us. And if we did draft your trust, we'll be getting a hold of you probably the first of the year to get all that stuff revised. Let's talk about this. I always wonder if it's really a wise idea to even bring this up. Because what it does is it puts people into the mindset of, where's the market today? And so I'm going back to the 5-year bucket because, if you look in November and December of last year, everybody wanted to take more risk. Not everybody, but a lot of people. I want to take more risk. I want to take more risk. So they pump it up and they change the models. They change their aggressiveness. And then the market drops. And then those same people are back at the same table saying, oh my gosh, Chicken Little, the sky is falling. I don't like the volatility. The world's coming to an end. Bottom line is, if you listen to what I call discognitive garbage, which is all that stuff that the financial media pumps out there. You got Robert Kiyosaki. He sells gold programs. He sells subscriptions to gold buying. He makes millions of dollars on seminars. Well, look at the media he puts out there. Oh, the world's coming to an end. Gold is your only safe place. Come on, really? And then you look at somebody like a Bill Ackerman. The world's coming to an end. So everybody takes his advice, sells, and he shorted the market, so he makes billions. So again, just the best thing to do, turn it off. It becomes, there's actually now a term that this kind of news is as addictive as nicotine, alcohol, caffeine. People need to get their news fix. Problem is, it can redirect your actions in a negative and wealth-losing way. So, best thing, turn off the financial news. Do a simple procedure. Reverse engineer what your cash flow is for the first 5 years. Put that in bucket 1. Figure out what you're going to need in cash flow 5 to 10. Put that in bucket 2. And whatever's left over goes in bucket 3. And when bucket 3 bumps up and down 20, 30%, turn it off. So some people ask me, though, they say, well, don't you look at your statements every day? Now, here's how I manage money. I have target algorithms. These are based upon fundamentals, not prices. They're based upon a lot of things that we study in macroeconomics, like per capita, debt per capita, free spend, which is the amount of money somebody has, interest rates, inflation, all these macroeconomic numbers. Those work into a where do we think we'll be in 2, 3, 4 years from now? Not tomorrow. Those algorithms do not direct our decisions today. They are how do we plan for tomorrow? Because remember, we don't model or invest money based upon what we think is going to happen in the next 12 or 24 months. That is why we have bucket 1, because nobody can predict it. Bucket 1 allows us the safety to put it into something which doesn't have the volatility because nobody can predict that short-term volatility. So those algorithms will then direct us into how do we comprise our models for that 5 and that 10-year structure. Now what happens is we have automated systems which will then tell me when do those algorithms get out of whack. If it changes, right? And not minor changes. We're talking about a 10% variance. And then it allows us to look at things and say, now do we need to remodel? So look at it this way. If you were navigating a ship, maybe the better thing to do is explain it in the sense of a car. So it's funny, probably 20 years ago, I went to Daytona racetrack and I had one of these professional drivers drive me at 120 miles an hour around Daytona. And I started getting nauseous. And I said, man, I'm not feeling good. And he says, look higher up. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, look 10 feet above your hood. He said, everybody is used to looking right about 2 feet above their hood because when you're going 50, 60 miles an hour in a typical automobile on a highway, you're not going that fast. You only look up a foot to 2 feet above your hood. But when you're going at 100 miles to 120 miles an hour, then the road is coming at you a lot faster. So you have to look up higher. And so as soon as I did, I was like, wow, all my nausea is gone. And now I could actually see where he was going. See, the problem is with financial media, people are looking, they're doing 120 miles an hour, but they're looking a foot above their hood. They get nauseous with the volatility. What you got to do is you got to understand volatility can never be mitigated in a 5-year period of time. You will lose every time. Risk and volatility can be mitigated and smoothed over a 5 to 10 and a 10 plus period of time. So when we're modeling things, again, we're not modeling for 60 months. That should already be done in bucket 1. We're modeling for the 60th through the 120th month. So people will say, well, don't you check your portfolio every day? No, actually I don't. I think right now, probably the last time I looked at my portfolio was 3 weeks ago. Why? I don't look at those numbers and say, ooh, I'm up, ooh, I'm down. That's so unhealthy, and it doesn't have any relativity or correlation to the productivity of the portfolio. What I do is I say, hey, where do I think that this ship or this car is going to be in 3 to 5 years? Because that's going to transcend into portfolio decisions that I make today. So people ask me that all the time. I get emails and all kinds of things. So yeah, there's the answer. Now, do I habitually log in to look at all of these economic indicators? No, I let the automation do it. I build the automation. I build the targets and the alerts. And once I build that map, I'm only going to have it tell me when I'm off track. Think of it like a GPS or like autopilot on an airplane, right? So autopilot works where it will set the destination into the airplane. It's going to adjust the rudder and the flaps to go straight on. But you can't predict air temperature or wind. So what if wind hits it? It will throw it off, and then it will realign itself. And that's all that this alerting and algorithm system does. If it's off by a little bit, it's not a big deal because it'll revert to the mean. But if it's off by a big number, then I got to readjust that. But it's not for the short term. I want to clarify that. I'm not adjusting things based upon what I think is going to happen in the next 6 or 12 months. It's 4, 5, 6 years out. So with that in mind, I want to go through the econ map again. And again, I wish I had some changes for you, but again, that's why I think this is it's healthier to go back to a month broadcast, because if you look at this, there's nothing has changed. Stock market's having our little downturn, but I really believe no matter what happens in the midterms, it's still going to go up. You look at profitability, you look at PE ratios. Right now, you do have a decrease in the free spend per capita. You have an increase in the debt per capita, but nowhere near where I'm worried about it yet. There's still a lot of punch. And unfortunately, the Fed is kind of trying to produce unemployment. But remember, unemployment is not always a bad thing for companies. In 40 years that I've been studying this, every time unemployment goes up, companies can get more profitable because they learn how to do the same thing with less labor. Employment productivity, now this, okay, I don't even know how to explain this one because I've never seen a productivity attitude in our country, anything like I've seen today. I think those World War II vets that came back and kind of built this country would be rolling over in their graves and embarrassed at this kind of attitude of, just I don't want to go to work. Now, that has helped with increase the inflation. And the real estate, we're starting to see it. We're starting to see that downtrend. But again, remember, 6 to 24 months is the real downturn time. Now, somebody asked me this the other day. What do you think real estate's going to go down by? Well, I can give you 2 answers and a third exclusion. The first answer is in certain markets, I can see real estate dropping 30 to 60%. Vegas, Boise, Tampa, Miami, certain parts of Wyoming. I mean, these places that just doubled and tripled in value. Even Salt Lake City had some just crazy insanity increases. But if you ask me nationwide on average, but I'll give you a criteria, the criteria is based upon a $450,000 house. So, you have to look at that and understand those numbers, that when I tell you this, if you're a home buyer in $2.5, $3 million house, $10 million house, that's a different market. People with a lot of money, they don't necessarily have they're not going to get a mortgage. So interest rates, free cash flow does not necessarily affect higher end markets. It's more middle to lower end markets. So if I take that average of the $450,000 house and I take it nationwide, I think it's going to drop somewhere between 8 to 9% next year, 8 to 9% in the second year. So if you look at that, it's not actually 18 to 20%. It's closer to 24% because you got to take off the first 8% and then recompute it. So 39 to 45% in certain markets, and I think over 2 years, 18 to 25% is a reasonable number. Again, but targeting a certain value of a piece of real estate. So that will open up the opportunity. And I said before, your circle of opportunity will probably be somewhere in the mid to end of 2023. I think we'll really start to see some deals popping up. No deals right now. All right, listen, since I'm going to change the schedule of this, probably what I would suggest is just become a subscriber on either Wise or Retire, which is really the channel designed for those people in the accumulation stage, and or if you are in the distribution stage, just Google H&H Financial Center on YouTube. You're going to see the page in front of you, and just hit subscribe. That way, you don't have to remember to come back here at the beginning of the month. It'll just shoot you an email and tell you when it's going to be scheduled. Hey, with that in mind, I'm going to wish you a wonderful weekend and have a good one. We'll talk to you next time, October 1st.